afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us for our greenhouse gas report. We are so excited to be able to share this with you after working on it for so long. My name is Rachel Whitbeck. I'm the Sustainability Assistant here at MUSC, and I'm joined by Christine von Kolnitz, the Sustainability Manager. She is also an Energy Manager as well. All right, so a little bit about MUSC sustainability. Just to start off with, our mission is to build healthy communities by inspiring and implementing solutions to environmental, social, and economic challenges. So some of our initiatives include food, climate and resilience, transportation, green building, recycling and composting, and energy and water. In order to keep up with events like this one, you're welcome to sign up to our monthly newsletter to stay in the loop. You can sign up at our website, which is musc.edu/gogreen. We are also on all forms of social media at MUSC Go Green. We just recently got a LinkedIn as well, so follow us on there. And we are on Yammer, MUSC's internal platform, as Broadcast Sustainability. Speaking of our social media, on there we'll keep you updated on each of these monthly events. So looking forward to next month, the topic is going to be sustainable transit. So we're in the process of getting together a panel of different people to talk about sustainable transportation in Charleston. So we'll have an update from CARTA, hopefully an update from some of our transit people here at MUSC with the parking and the shuttles. We'll have an update about the Ashley River pedestrian and bike bridge from the city of Charleston. And hopefully we'll have an update on Lime as well. They are going to be kind of replacing the Holy Spokes bikes here in Charleston. So stay tuned for that next month. And now I'll turn it over to Christine to start our greenhouse gas presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Let's see. All right, we're going to start by just kind of going over, well, why have we been doing this greenhouse gas audit? And if you have any questions during the presentation, please go ahead and put them in the chat. So we're doing a greenhouse gas audit because greenhouse gases are causing global warming. And this is a short explanation of how they're doing that. So solar radiation in the form of light waves passes through the atmosphere, and it comes into the atmosphere and some of the heat stays in the that blue ring, which is the outer rim of the atmosphere. Some of the heat escapes, which is a good thing. But because we're putting so many greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, what's happening is that the atmosphere is becoming sort of clogged with those greenhouse gases, and it's keeping the heat from escaping outside of that blue line, which is the atmosphere. And it's kind of like putting a blanket around the globe, and it's making the globe warmer. So the more greenhouse gases we pump into the atmosphere, the warmer our atmosphere is and the warmer our planet is. Here's our atmosphere. This very, very thin blue line that's it. That's all it is between us and space. So this is what we're doing to our atmosphere. We're putting 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into that atmosphere every 24 hours. In the northern hemisphere, the summer temperatures have shifted over time. We're going to show you that. So from 1951 to 1980, this is what it looked like. We've got the blue is the cooler than average, we've got average, and then the red is the warmer than average. This green line, we're going to call that our baseline. And here's what's happened over time. From 2010 to 2020, that has shifted dramatically. As you can see, we didn't even have that many extremely hot days. They were covered like 0.1% of the land. Now they're covering 22.1% of the land. And the average now is technically warmer than average in the middle there. Our old average temperatures are just, shuttled off to the side. They're a little sliver. And the cooler than average temperatures are almost, they're going away. In Charleston County specifically, there's this tool called the Climate Explorer. And you can go on there and you can get all sorts of graphs and charts and predictions for the future. This is one of them that shows the potential 90-degree+ days in Charleston. And as you can see, it's going to be on the rise. And the red line is that's if we keep putting out all of this greenhouse gases, if our emissions keep rising at the level they're rising now. If we kind of control that and keep that under wraps a little bit, that blue line shows, a lower emissions level. Both lines still continue to show added heat, because all of the greenhouse gases that we've put into the atmosphere are going to remain in the atmosphere unless we can somehow take them out, which people are working on, but not successfully yet. All right, so greenhouse effects on Charleston. There's one of them. This is a graph showing the high tides. And, back in the early 1900s, we didn't have very many high tides that were over 7 feet. Now, as you can see, the number of high tides that are over 7 feet have risen exponentially. As in 2019, we had 89 in 1 year. This is what it's doing around MUSC. The upper left corner is Ashley Avenue, and that's in a rainstorm event. The upper right is showing a car, a truck there underwater. That's Earhart Street. That's the lowest point at the MUSC campus, and that's during a hurricane. And the two bottom pictures, the one on the left with the Jeep, that's going, that's Haygood Avenue in the middle of the day after a big rainstorm and high tide. And then again here on MUSC campus, right near our emergency room, this is a spring rain event. So what's going on in Charleston Harbor? We've been measuring the sea level rise in Charleston Harbor since the early 1900s. And we know that in Charleston Harbor specifically, the sea level has risen over a foot. On the bottom graph, if you look at the yellow section, what's going on there is it's showing the predicted minor coastal flooding. And we've got the observed in the yellow. That's what we've seen. And it rises to the orange level. And that's intermediate coastal flooding. And then if you go up to the top right and you put it on it, you look at it in a different way. So we've got all these different choices, low to extreme. And if you put it at the intermediate level, which is what we've observed, and you try to guess what's going to happen in the future, the city of Charleston is planning for a 2 to 3 foot sea level rise in the next 50 years. This is what that looks like in Charleston. On the left is no sea level rise. In the middle, that's 3 feet of sea level rise. And this picture is a picture at MUSC. It's showing blue tape around that pole and that tree. What we did was we measured the elevation to 3 feet on those two objects from the middle of the street. And that is where 3 feet would be at MUSC in the future, 50 years. So what are we going to try to do about it? We are working on climate action planning, and the first milestone is to inventory your GHG emissions, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are our measurement boundaries for this audit? It's just the Charleston division. MUSC, the enterprise, has over 1,600 beds, 100 outreach sites, but we are just going to be focusing on Charleston. And that's not just downtown. That includes some leased facilities. It includes facilities all over the Tri-County region, in the Charleston region. All right, so types of GHG emissions and sources. We have tried to gather as much data as we can. We have carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases, hydrofluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride. We're trying to get all of this data. The yellow are sources not yet included in our audit. We have not gotten the information for dry ice shipping or lab animals. There's some, aerosol propellants and things like that we haven't been able to get information on. The new sources that we've added since the last time we audited include inhalation anesthetics. So we've got, in surgeries, the anesthetics actually have some greenhouse gas potential, and sevoflurane and isoflurane are two of those. So we've added that since the last audit, and we're going to continue to try to add things as we can. Mute that person. Okay. All right. So how are greenhouse gases measured? We've got carbon dioxide equivalents. We've got methane. We've got nitrous oxide. We've got nitrogen oxide. We've got methane. We've got all these other different greenhouse gases. But what we're going to be talking about is metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So all those other gases have been equalized into carbon dioxide. And we're looking at different scopes. Scope 1 are sources owned and controlled by an institution. We've got fertilizer, chemicals, refrigerants. Scope 2 is the power that we buy from our electric provider. And scope 3, that is anything other. These are purchases, commuting, travel, solid waste, wastewater. As you can see, I've got some things crossed out here. We're not getting information on study abroad air travel or travel to and from a student's home, like if they went home for, a winter break. But we are trying to get the commuting miles from students. We're not measuring food at this point or paper. All right, so how are we doing this? We've been using SciMap, which is a sustainability indicator management and analysis platform. It's used by over 1,500 schools right now. That's what we've been using in the past. This particular audit, though, we worked with the Clemson Energy Visualization and Analytics Center, and Tim Howard is from that. He is on the call today, and we'll ask him to say a few words. That we are a President's Climate Commitment signatory from 2007, so our data will be public on that website. And hopefully we'll be beginning climate action planning with other institutions in the Charleston area. All right, I'm going to get into this a little bit. Tim, I wanted to see if you could come on now and just say a few words about CVAC and how you've been able to help us.
Thank you, Christine. Yep. So Clemson started.
We can't see you.
Okay, we just clicked it, but it didn't work. There we go.
Great.
So Clemson started a department called Clemson Energy Visualization Center about 3 years ago, and we've been doing the carbon footprint for Clemson. And we're looking to support other state agencies in South Carolina. So we've partnered up with MUSC, and we're putting their data through the same system that Clemson uses to measure their carbon footprint. and look at their projects that they've got going on to reduce their carbon footprint.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe you could stay on and the two of us could talk about the graphs and charts. And,
sure.
Okay.
Happy to.
Great. So this is an overview of the metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent produced by MUSC from early 2000 to 2020. The 2020 metric tons, I put the number up here, it's 169,609. So one thing you can see is that, you know, in the early aughts, we were not measuring as much of scope 3. And now we are, you know, we're doing better with our measurement, getting more information in there. And the scope 2, the purchased electricity, we've been pretty good about getting that data all along. And that was it's because it's easy to get technically. And then scope 1, again, you know, we've over time gotten better at measuring that scope as well. Tim, did you want to say anything about this one?
No, I think the rules changed in 2006. That's why there's an increase there. I think there was a change there on how things. It's not just you. It's nationwide how things were changed. So.
Okay. And the other thing you can see on this is that, you know, our emissions are going up and down. And we'll get into a little bit about why that's happening. So we've got the community indicators here listed. And population, you know, that's one of the reasons that a greenhouse gas audit might go up or down. You know, we're getting more people, we have more emissions simply from more people commuting to campus, more people using energy on campus. And as you can see, our budget's going up, we're spending more, and our gross square footage is going up. And one thing in our office we're trying to do is, you can see between 2015 and 2019 that the square footage went down. And the reason there is because we are now trying to really right size this data. We're not putting in any gross square foot from any facility that we don't have data for. In the past, we just didn't have the ability to get that granular. So now we're just getting better data. And we're trying to normalize things by cooling and heating degree days. What we want to do on the gross square footage, we do not have every leased property in this data set. So we are still continuing to work to get that information. All right. So on the top here, these little dots, what that's showing are the new spaces that have come online. We've got buildings that you know, 3 that came online in 2011. A couple that have come online in the ensuing years, and then in 2018, a couple more buildings. Some of these are very small buildings, but a few of them are pretty big. So we've just had our children's hospital open up in 2018, and another children's health facility in North Charleston that opened up. So these are really going to affect our greenhouse gas audit. The bottom section here is showing population in the orange color, gross square foot in the purple color, and the metric tons carbon dioxide equivalent in the red. And it's interesting to me how the metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent most of the time is tracking with our population. And in the last few years here, it seems to be tracking more with our gross square foot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future there. All right, so the Charleston region, greenhouse gas emissions. Tim and I were talking about this yesterday. There's so much we could say about this chart. You know, citywide versus City of Charleston, and then MUSC and College of Charleston. Number one, they're different dates. So the City of Charleston data is from 2018. The College of Charleston data is from 2019, and our data in here is from 2020. So, you know, we're definitely not looking at apples to apples here. And, you know, as Tim so eloquently said, we're not all measuring the same things. It's very hard to get some data, and, you know, I might be able to get data that, you know, Katie can't get at the city, or Darcy might be able to get something at College Charleston that I can't get. So, you know, take these numbers with a grain of salt. There is a question about what's included in citywide. You can go online to the City of Charleston website and Google their whole greenhouse gas audit. It is out there for everyone to see, but they have buildings mainly, electricity use, commuting, I believe, for their employees. I didn't see waste, which we're gathering. So, you know, there's just some differences in there. Yeah. Let's see. What is that question? So there, the question is, oh, the citywide. I guess it's just every property that has a city tax map number they were trying to get the data on. I hope that answers the question. Actually, Ariel put it on there. City inventory. This inventory expands to the entire city limits of Charleston. It is often called a community inventory as it represents emissions from activities throughout the entire city of Charleston community. Thank you, Ariel. And Ariel wanted to know what location we used for the cooling and heating days. That was from the National Weather Service website. And do we have, Sydney was asking about projections, so we will get to that. All right, kind of caught up on questions there. All right, emissions per capita per person, looking pretty good. We're going down. That's one thing, you know, that you like to see, from 2011 to 2020 there. But it's sort of leveled off between 2019 and 2020 there. Even though we hopefully we're putting out fewer emissions in 2020 because of COVID. Emissions per gross square foot. That's sort of a it's going down, but then it's going up a tiny bit too. But it's by fractions on this graph. It's hard to see that. All right, we've got our emissions by source. So this is a great graph. We've got direct transportation, which is anything that MUSC spends on diesel and gasoline for all of our vehicles. Fertilizer, we don't have any information on animals in that, but we do have the information on the fertilizer. Other on-campus stationary could be something like a generator, diesel fuel for a generator. And then the refrigerants and chemicals, that's, you know, refrigerants for our HVAC systems and the chemicals like I was talking about for our surgeries. So as you can see here, part of this is because we're getting better at measuring this. That's one reason why this is going up. And another reason is because, you know, we're growing and we have more use. If you have anything to say anytime, you can just stop me, Tim.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. Yeah, I mean, that is a valid point, though. You know, some of the reasons we're going up is we're improving the way we measure things. We're becoming more aware, right? And we're accurate, and that's part of the process. Is it's not just always reducing things, but it's also getting a better understanding on how we measure things. Because, like you said, back to that original graph about the city and Charleston and MUSC, even though you may be saying you've got carbon footprint of this, you may not all be measuring it the same way. You may be using dollars as opposed to gallons, for travel, for example, miles. So we all calculate our emissions differently.
Right. Yeah. And Rachel, I think you were going to come in here and do some of these charts for us.
I was, yes. Hello.
I forgot on this one. You were supposed to do this one. All right.
Okay. We do have one more question from Ariel here, if you want to answer that. She says, when you calculated the emissions by gross square foot, are only the building emissions included or all categories?
That would be all categories. Yeah.
This is our scope 2 emissions. As you can see, it is just all one color because we only have purchased electricity. The other categories would include renewable power, cogeneration, which we don't have. We are working on cogeneration though. And as you can see, we have gone steadily down, which is nice. A little bit up in the past few years, but generally a downward trend, which is great to see. Anything else?
I'll go ahead and say that that's not all MUSC is doing. Yes, we are using less energy, but the energy that we are getting from our supplier is cleaner energy. They have, Dominion Energy in South Carolina. Before it was SE&G. They have, closed coal-fired power plants, and they're relying more on natural gas. There's some more solar on the system now. So the mix of fuel is getting cleaner for our gases, for our energy, and that's showing in our numbers as well.
Yes, very true. We do have one more question here from Erica. What % of MUSC buildings are leased? Do we know that?
I don't know the percentage. That's a good question, though. I'll see if I can find out.
Yeah, we'll try to get back to you on that. And then another one from Sydney, is there consideration for MUSC to invest more in clean energy, such as adding solar panels to buildings?
Right now, it is expensive for MUSC to do that. So as far as I know, there are no plans to do that right now.
Yep, unfortunately. All right, scope 3 here. And again, like Christine was saying, this is the one that we have started trying to track better. It's the most difficult one to track because it's the emissions from indirectly related things to the organization. You can see the list here: directly financed air travel. That has been difficult to get. And like Tim was saying, we have to collect that in dollars. Like the air tickets don't say the number of miles that were traveled. Like a gas receipt, you could easily translate that into the miles that you drove and the gallons that you used. But for flights, it's very hard for us to accurately see how many emissions were actually produced based on the dollar amount, because as we all know, flight prices are always fluctuating. It really has nothing to do with how far you're going. And Tim was working with his intern Emma, and they figured out that that's actually likely overestimated by about 70%, which is very interesting. So you have to keep all of this in mind while you're looking at these numbers. Next is other directly financed travel. That's mostly the gas mileage that I was mentioning for employees going on car trips. We have our solid waste here, staff and student commuting. So staff commuting is obviously the most large section here. It is a lot of single passenger cars coming to the peninsula. So that's definitely something that is very clear that we should focus on to try to reduce. Students typically live a little bit closer. They are more likely to walk or bike to class, so that's why theirs is a bit smaller. We have T&D losses and wastewater as well, which are super tiny. Yeah, do you guys have any other comments on this one? It seems like the staff commuting has gone up a little bit recently, but I don't believe this is normalized for the number of students and staff. I don't believe it is. So that would explain any increase.
Yes, it's not.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, it's not. So you would expect it to see it going up because your population is going up.
Yeah.
If you have more staff, then that it's not unusual for that to happen.
Exactly. Got to keep all of these things in mind while looking at these charts.
So Cindy had a question about is MUSC considering carbon offsets for some of these high emissions activities like financed air travel and solid waste, and is this something that has been in conversation? It is not in conversation. I can tell you that we have bought some RECs, renewable energy credits, and we bought those for green building. So one of our buildings on campus, Bioengineering, is a LEED Gold building. And we were so close to getting the LEED Gold that we were able to purchase a couple of credits to be able to get into that LEED Gold status. Shawn Jenkins is a LEED Silver building, and again, the same thing happened there. We bought some renewable energy credits to be able to get to the level that we wanted to get to in that building.
Another question from Erica. Are you partnering with the city's new food waste program for compost that could help reduce fertilizer needs? We have been promoting their new drop-off sites. I think you mean like getting the actual fertilizer from them, so that is a good idea. I think it's so new that we haven't really had any conversations about that. Christine, do you know?
Right, so we have a contract with a local company that collects our food waste for composting at Bees Ferry. So we've been doing that for many, many years. So we've been sort of ahead on that. And then we also have composting on campus in our urban farm, so that, if the food waste was generated on campus, or if the yard waste was generated on campus, we can compost it on our campus. And that is, so we've been composting for a long time. We actually do get some of the compost from Bees Ferry, or some planting beds on our campus too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And one question is, are there compost stations for all the employees all over campus easily? Yes, we have really nice color-coded composting stations in every single one of our cafeterias. And we do have composting bins in several buildings on campus, mostly the first floor and the lobbies. So I know bioengineering, drug discovery, basic science, maybe not CRI, basic science. Rutledge Tower has one. So, but there is a list on our MUSC sustainability website that you can go and find out more about that.
Yes, I could try to send that in at some point in the chat to our website. All right, so here is our commuting page, further breaking down our employees and our students. As you can see, it's like I was saying earlier, most of our employees, except for Christine, who takes the bus, tend to drive to the peninsula. So that is a large majority of them, while the students do a little bit better, but still the majority drive. So that is why our emissions are kind of going up, but again, that has to do with the number of students and staff increasing as well. So that is important to keep in mind. And here is our commuting emissions. I guess based on the bus ridership. So looks like it's really gone up from 2010 to 2015 and then slowly gone down again. I'm not really sure why that is. Do you have any insight, Christine?
Yeah, I was thinking for 2020, definitely COVID.
Right.
That definitely, of course, most of our employees that did not have to be downtown in an office were not in an office. They didn't go anywhere. They stayed at their homes. So that actually helped reduce emissions. And we're not sure how to calculate that. So you know, it could help our emissions if we knew how to calculate it. But we don't have good numbers on how many employees were not driving to downtown. But we do have the numbers on how many did not get on the bus. So that's what's showing up here.
All right, next we have our landfill weight and our wastewater. So this is a bit all over the place, I guess. So the landfill weight here is in metric tons. And then over here to the right is the greenhouse gases in metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. So that's likely accounting for methane gas, which is why this number is very high, because that's a very potent greenhouse gas. Whenever you send waste to the landfill, it's going to create methane gas, which is why we love composting, saving food from creating methane gas in the landfills. It's also very expensive to transport so much weight to the landfills. So it's very important to try to keep out what you can. Looks like it went way down in 2017 and then back up. I think we just had an issue, right, Christine, with our data for that year?
That is correct. The 2017 and 2018 data, we're working on it. The system that we use to capture all that waste data, there was a number issue in there, and we're working with the company to fix it.
Yes. So again, something to keep in mind when you're looking at our charts. I think it would be a little bit more stable if that data was fixed.
And this is not showing the amount of waste that we're recycling. So, yes. and that's a, you know, it's a good thing. You know, these numbers would be higher if we were not recycling about almost 30% of the waste stream. So, right, you know, these numbers are high, but they would be higher if we were not recycling.
Yes, so that's the thing about SciMap, is that they only want to track our landfill waste because that's what's creating emissions. But what you're not seeing is what's not creating emissions that we could have sent there but didn't, such as our compost and our recycling, our cardboard, our paper that we shred and everything that's not being sent to the landfill. So I think that we will be trying to include all aspects of our waste, including recycling and everything, with CVAC in the future, since SciMap doesn't take that, but that would be good to look at as well with these graphs. Well, we have some questions that I can. Holly asks, so are you calculating employee transportation by surveying bus ridership and comparing to the number of employees? Have you tried a survey of employees or students to get a greater sample size and ideas about things like carpooling and ride shares? So we were discussing this the other day. We think that starting now, we will be using the bus numbers to get a more accurate estimate of the percentage of commuters not driving or riding the bus, and use that number to estimate the others. I would love to do a survey. It's just kind of hard to get a large enough sample size with our bandwidth and reach, and it is usually a certain type of person taking our surveys. So we're not sure that that would be super accurate, but if there was a way to do it, then that is a great idea. And then Sydney asks, are there plans to increase recycling or compost efforts to decrease the amount sent to the landfill? I mean, we're always promoting our recycling programs. We had our annual recycling guide go out last month to try to stop a lot of the contamination happening on campus. So if anything, for example, that's not paper is put into the paper bin, that's not only not sustainable, but dangerous because all of our paper is shredded. So we don't want any injuries or fires to start. So contamination is very bad, which is why we do try to get the word out about where to put your things. And then regarding compost, like I said, we are really trying to help the city get the word out about their drop-off sites. We also like to promote Compost Now, which can pick up your compost from your house. If you don't feel like dropping it off, there is just a fee involved since they'll be picking it up, but that is a great option. And we do just try to promote the reasons behind recycling and composting. Are there any more efforts in place, Christine?
The compost facility that opened in the main hospital just opened this past year. So, we are, always increasing the availability of the bins when possible. I do know that the recycling program, also partially because of COVID and many other economic events in the greater, globe, is having a hard time getting employees. So that's an issue. We need to be able to, have a good staff to collect all of this material. So that's one thing that's holding things up right now. But other than that, yes, I think recycling and composting is always trying to do more. And then I see another one here about, okay, so this next question is about this graph that's on the screen. We've got this emissions projection. And yeah, go ahead.
So I'll just explain this graph really quickly. So the light purple bars is what we're going to look like if we continue going the way that we are. And then the darker purple, or gray as Tim sees it, line going down to 2050, that would be with different goals in place. So this specific line would be a 3% decrease until 2030. And then starting in 2030, it would be a 5% decrease. So those are the goals that would be in place. We don't currently have a climate action plan yet, but now that our greenhouse gas accounting project is basically complete, we can start working on that to try to achieve these goals.
Right. So the question was, how do you aim to achieve 0% by 2050 without investments in renewable energy? We don't think we need to have the answer to that right now. What we need to have an answer to is how we're going to get to lower emissions by 2030. So we want to have an interim goal first, and then a long range goal, and the climate action planning process should be able to answer that question. We do have a performance contract going on right now where we're changing out all of the lights on campus from fluorescent to LED. So that's one of the projects in there. Another project is to put there's a system on campus. It controls your HVAC. So what we're trying to do is set limits on the temperature range in certain areas on campus. We're not affecting patient areas or animal areas, but an office or a conference room their temperature settings would be within a certain comfort range, so that you wouldn't walk in a room and have a room be 60 degrees. because that's just not energy efficient. So, so we're going to have, that has already started. A lot of buildings are already, the control system has already been adjusted. We've worked that out with the people in those offices and those office areas. A lot of their offices have sensors, so when they walk out, the temperature will rise a little bit or fall a little bit depending on the season. And when they come back in, if they've been gone longer than 15 minutes, the sensor will pick that up and the temperature will get back to the normal comfort settings for that area. So that's going to save over $1 million on campus and save a lot of energy as well. There's several other projects that are going on too, but we're always looking at projects to save energy on the mechanical side of things. Let's see. And our renewals, you know, we can't say right now what's part of the 2030 plan because we haven't done the climate planning process. So that's, you know, GHG first, then climate action planning. So, you know, that's part of that answer.
Yeah, so these are the questions that we're going to be thinking about as well as we start planning this plan.
Right. Next steps. All right. Again, we're going to continue to do this audit annually and hopefully working with Clemson's CVAC Center. And we want to expand the scope of the audit. We always want the audit to be better. We want to get to the entire MUSC Charleston division, including all of those leased properties. And we want to expand the scope 3 reporting because there's a lot of things that we aren't getting data for. And we want to standardize how we get the data so that it's not so time consuming on our part. We would like to put together a website where the people on campus that give us the data, they could just go to that and put their information in, and that would help a lot. And then, of course, we want to create the climate action plan. And just to give you some idea, we talked about the performance contract that's going to be complete by the end of this summer. That is due. I mean, they think that it will save 2,519 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's a lot of carbon there that we are going to be saving from this one performance contract. And we're also going to be saving money too. These contracts are they're literally to save money. So the savings helped pay for the contract over time. And then we're in design right now for something called a cogeneration project. And what that would do is use natural gas to create electricity on campus. It would be an on-campus facility, so a lot of the losses that you get from just having energy transported from the energy facility that's way out away from your facility, you know, a lot of energy is just lost in the transportation of that. So if it's on our campus, we're not going to lose as much in transportation, and then the waste heat from creating that electricity would be used to boil water. And that uses the initial energy about 80% more efficiently. So we would be saving over 20,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent if we were able to institute this project. So those are some of the plans that would go into our climate action planning. Yeah, we're looking forward to, you know, doing more planning and being able to report what's going on and hopefully get a lot of people involved with that.
Yeah, that's the next question, is if there's a way for employees to get involved. As we said, we haven't started the plan yet, but we will definitely be trying to involve anybody who's interested.
Right. We look forward to being able to get this climate action plan out there. Tim, thank you so much for coming online today and helping us out with this audit. It looks great. very wonderful to have the visualizations there, and it was really nice to work with you on this.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been great working with you guys too. Appreciate it.
Right. All right, everyone. So hopefully we'll see you back here next month when we're talking about transportation and, moving forward on trying to impact our GHG with fewer emissions from transportation. All right. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you guys. See you next time.